to Envision. I'm Deanne Conrad here with Dr. Brian Maher. He's the superintendent in Sioux Falls Public Schools, and you are watching Envision. Our segment today talks a little bit about the budgeting process, and oh, that word. We start talking about it in November, and really there are a lot of meetings that take place, a lot of discussion that takes place leading up to a final approval in July. But where are we at this point in time? Talking about February, March. This is kind of where the rubber meets the road and we start digging in deep.
We're in the heat of it. That's where we are right now. And you talked about how we start in November. We start in November for the following school year and actually even subsequent years. And we never really cease talking about the budget. It is a daily conversation. Part of that is it's a real complex item. We have about $250 million budget. We have a huge budget that is an economic driver in this community and a big issue for the state of South Dakota. It's one of the bigger, maybe the biggest, I don't remember, maybe the biggest single source in the state budget. So it is a very large mechanism that's critical to student achievement, which is what ultimately we're about, and that's developing students. So there are a lot of moving parts to the budgeting process.
And all of those things, though you've been a superintendent for a number of years, the process might be a little different here as different from in the past. But the focus, again, is always looking at the programs, the initiatives, the people that help improve the student achievement. We have a big meeting coming up in March. Some things still up in the air in terms of the funding, and so we have to kind of wait to see how all of that shakes out.
Many things up in the air. One of the things is the funding. We should know here soon, or at least as of this recording, how that's going to look going forward. And that's a big piece. Whether that's what we want it to be or not, it's a key element on how we move forward. Another piece is we really get the folks in the school district involved in how can we help student achievement, how can we make our organization better, and we bring in a lot of ideas. We can't fund probably even very many of those ideas, but we really try to figure out what can help us. The strategic plan that we're just finishing up as a district also helps us in terms of what initiatives we're trying to get accomplished in the district and how do we put the necessary resources behind the strategy involved to make those strategic planning priorities come true. So, and then as you mentioned, we have this very large group that is made up predominantly of school people, but also we have community representation on that group, because we always recognize that we're part of the ecosystem, which is the city of Sioux Falls. So it is a very complex issue, and I would be remiss if I didn't say thank goodness that we have Todd Veek as our assistant superintendent in charge of finance, because I think he's as good as anybody in the state. If he's not the best, he's on a very small list of those who are the best, and so he really shepherds us through that process quite well.
Absolutely. And then we'll do a tentative adoption in April, but all things become final then in July. So this is a several month-long process.
Right, it is. We have, and once the budget is adopted, as the next year goes on, we have frequent updates for the Board of Education in general, but specifically for the Finance Committee to see where we are and whether we're on target or off target one way or the other, and how can we get back to the original budget. All of that informs us on the next budget. The budgeting process is an incremental process from last year to this year and from this year to next year, and all of that is somewhat cyclical in how it comes to fruition.
So a lot of work done already to this point, but a lot of work yet to do.
A lot of work yet to do.
And the final budget then will be adopted in July. We always do a tentative adoption in April just to kind of get a sense as to how many teachers we need to hire, where our growth areas are, and things like that. So we're watching the numbers very closely, and we'll be watching and waiting to find out from the state what funding does so that we can continue on with our priorities here in Sioux Falls. Thank you for joining us today on Envision.